Welcome everybody to episode 3 of the Racquets United podcast. This has been a labor of love, and also the goal is to bring people from our sport who've been passionate about tennis, passionate about racket sports, passionate about the RSPA, and bring them in behind the microphone and really get to know them. I want to thank our sponsors and our endorsees, Tennis Warehouse, Pickleball Warehouse, and Dunlop. They're both fantastic partners for us, and I just want to thank them for all their support. Please continue to support them. But we are thrilled, and I keep saying thrilled every episode, but we're really excited to have Rob Scott with us today. Rob is he's the executive director of USTA Intermountain. He's a former national board member of the RSPA. He is a long-time, we don't put numbers in this podcast, so we just say long-time member, but you've been in the industry for years. Welcome, first of all. So thank you so much for being here. But you've been in tennis, you're passionate about tennis, and you're working tennis. Tell us a little, how did it start? How did you get here, and why'd you stay?
That's a lot.
Yeah, I'll just load all that right on top.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, right.
So,
and that's only question number 1, so you can keep going.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here and hopefully give back some that I've gotten from the RSP over the course of my lifetime. Tennis has always been a part of my life, kind of peripherally. My great-grandfather built the first tennis court. I've been told this is family lore in Nebraska, Shadron, Nebraska. Yeah, right around the turn of the century.
We have more in common.
Yeah,
okay.
18s. And my grandfather, so his son helped build the Grand Junction Tennis Club. It's a community tennis association in the 50s, 1953. So my mom played. But for me, growing up, it was all about traditional sports. I grew up on a small rural community on a dairy farm. Basketball was my main sport. My dad poured a slab out in the yard, and I spent hours and hours shoveling that and working on my moves and stuff. And so when we moved to town, my father sold the farm when I was 16, and I just kind of felt lost. So I went down to the tennis courts and just started hitting against the wall and played and played and played. And how it worked in my high school back then, 3-year high school, a long time ago, is that if you lettered in 4 varsity sports, you didn't have to do PE as a senior. And PE as a senior was the not popular kids, not so fun.
Yep.
And so the first year they had a tennis team at my high school was that year. So I went out for the team, how hard can this be? And I could beat everyone in town. So they put me at number 1 singles. And so I got crushed. I lost so many matches.
Serve it up right there, right?
1, and it really lit a fire under me to learn the sport, and to, this was a great sport that I had kind of stumbled onto. Although literally, I used to hit against a barn door on my farm when I was growing up because of my mom's influence. So then I started teaching in high school. I taught at the local county fairgrounds where they had 4 tennis courts, and so I was part of that. And then I went to the University of Colorado and studied science for a couple of years, but my whole time I was there, I was working out and trying to get better at tennis, and ended up beating all the people that beat me in high school in tournaments throughout the winter time. So there's a little vengeance involved. Mm-hmm. But then I was struggling with what I wanted to do with my life and my career. Unlike some of my peers, I did not have the support of my father. There was a very contentious relationship, but I love tennis. And so my sister, who was a recreation degree major, said, "Why don't you just major in recreation? You're doing that anyway." And I did. And my senior year, I had to do an internship at the local club. So I went down to the Harvest House Sporting Association at that time. And the woman who was in charge of the program director of tennis, Liz Rankin, who actually Trish Faulkner got involved in the sport, made me get certified. And this was in 1979. So I had a very early, induction into the USPTA through Liz. And that one thing led to another, and eventually I was promoted to director of tennis at that facility. But I was very young. I was like 20, in my early 20s, and I really wasn't ready for that level of responsibility. The job didn't last for me, and for a variety of reasons, I wanted to get involved in the ski industry. So what I did is I moved into that industry for about 10 years. I had the tennis in the summer, skiing in the winter.
Sounds like a great life.
It was fantastic before I had kids. But yeah, it was great. And so I worked my way up in the ski industry. I was started as a lift operator. When I left, I was mountain manager. And that's where a lot of my mentorship in management came from, was that side of the industry. So,
Talk about some great mentors, and sounds like some started in tennis, but you even mentioned earlier today that they did also come from the ski industry. Talk about that and
sure.
how that really had an impact
Yeah.
on
I
your
mean,
life.
well, circling back to tennis, I mean, when I was in high school and playing a lot, when I was, just living at the courts, there was an art teacher. His name was Wayne Igaki. And he and his wife would travel to Boulder and Denver and play in the Community Tennis Association tennis tournaments that they had back in that day. And so they were the ones that introduced me to that somewhat organized competition. And he had an eye for, I mean, he was he was a high school art teacher, but he had an eye for a few things. So he was a mentor when I was developing my game back then. And then, the players of my era were, they were Stan Smith and Ken Rosewall, Rod Laver, John Newcomb, all great sportsmen, gentlemen, athletic. We've all played serve and volley tennis. Remember, I'm from Colorado, where it's 5,000 feet, and so we try not to let the ball bounce back in the day. And so those are some of my mentors early in tennis. But then when I went to the ski industry, I had a gentleman named Rick Bruner, who was the manager of lift operations, and he was the one that really first introduced me to service leadership as a manager. And I mean, it's something that I've strived to do all throughout my career in management. I mean, I also learned a lot. I studied a lot of Peter Drucker's work back in the day. And my favorite saying is culture eats strategy for breakfast, because that's true. And you can have the best strategy and the best organization on the planet, but if you don't have the culture behind it, it's going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the members. And I'd be remiss if I didn't throw in there some of the my fellow pros that mentored me when I was a young pro in the Intermountain RSPA, people like Joe Thompson, Jeff Hodgson, John Williams, and Jim Lear. Jim Lear, when he did the 16-second cure, was an instant celebrity and hero. And I was a big fan of Tim Galloway, the inner game of tennis.
Absolutely.
Because I could see the transformative power of what the mind does on the tennis court. And then when Ash beat Connors, just crushed him in Wimbledon, and he was meditating on the changeovers, I was like, I'm in. So that was part of it. And then as I progressed in my, my career, people like Kurt Camperman and Scott Schultz, that were mentors for me. Yeah,
that's great. And I appreciate you mentioning by name, because that means they were that meaningful to you. And I think when you have people like that in your lives, not only do you look up to them, but you want to pass along what they learned. You almost feel like you are a pass through from some of those great guides. Keep talking. So you went from ski and then you got back into tennis. Is that when you hit the manufacturing side?
Yeah, no, actually what happened there was my daughter was 3, and I realized that if I was going to stay in the ski industry, I was working nights, weekends, holidays, and my child would never know who her father was. And so at that point in time, my wife, the other person who I would be very remiss if I didn't mention as a mentor, is my current wife, Abby. Abby was a mountaineer, a rock climber, an ocean kayaker, a fly fisher. She was a leader in the National Outdoor Leadership School, helped draw up their Leave No Trace program with the Forest Service. But I don't want to get off on a tangent other than to thank her for everything that she's done for me in the course of my lifetime. There's no way I could be where I'm at without her support and her mentorship over time. And now it's my granddaughters, so it's great. But so then I realized, look, something's got to give. So I quit the ski industry. She had required a job in Wyoming as the scientific research director for National Outdoor Leadership School. So I left the ski industry. We went there. I tried to develop a program, actually did develop a program at the town park in Wyoming, but when realized that I really wanted to become more involved in tennis, and got the director of tennis position at a private member-owned golf and country club in North Denver called the Ranch Country Club. And I came in at a time when the members had just bought the club. from a real estate developer, and they had maybe 7 kids in their junior program, and there are a lot of naysayers. You'll never make it work. It's not going to happen. We had indoor courts, so it obviously is a key thing when you're in a temperate climate like we were. So I transitioned that club with the help of a great tennis committee and board and staff that I had, fantastic staff. And so I was there for 17 years. And
Wow.
when I left that club, we had about 90% court utilization. We had 48 adult teams on 8 courts. We had over 150 kids in our junior program. But the industry transition was we were Prince exclusive. And we just crushed it with our account was one of the best accounts. And anyway, so to make a long story endless, what happened was my rep at the time, Ginger Phillips, was transitioning out of being a rep, and my kids were out of school. My son was a junior and ready to move on, and I was kind of bored. I mean, I'd done pretty much everything there. So I asked Ginger about her job. What do you do? What do you do? How does this work? What's your life like? Do you make enough money? And so I threw my hat in the ring for her position, and I got it. So I left that career as teaching and jumped into manufacturing with Prince. So I was with them for a cup of coffee, about maybe 8 months, and then my hometown, Louisville, Colorado, was where the North American headquarters for Babolat was. And so my former college coach, C.D. Bodum, was the one.
I didn't know he was your college coach. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, we know we have a lot more in common.
I know we talked about
Absolutely
this.
right.
We talked about this at one point.
Yes.
And Nancy Morin, bless her heart, God rest her soul. Anyway. So they kept, you got to come work for us. I said, I can't. I made this commitment to Prince. I got to stick with my commitments, but let's keep talking. And they did. And so I jumped ship to Babolat. And then I was the Intermountain Babolat rep. So I was border to border. I was from Montana down to the Mexican border with Arizona and New Mexico thrown in. So giant territory. But so much fun. I mean, the relationships that I met over time and learning that side of the industry was just crucial to my development as a human and my professional development.
So you transitioned from the court to the manufacturing side, which is, you see a lot of people do that, but I'm not sure necessarily all the skills translate. So you've got to learn new stuff, but how did you make it work? What were some of the key things that you really focused on to be successful on the manufacturing side?
Well, you got to know your product. That's really important. You got to know your product. You got to know how your product can help the person you're talking to. How can this product help Joe build his junior program or increase his margin or his bottom line? How can this help his family and his business? And so being able to draw those lines between, and every club's different, and back in the day it was a little different than it is now, but everyone's different in their business plan. There's some sort of similarities and commonalities, but knowing their business, knowing what they did. But for me, it was also more important to just have the relationship, just so you know the guy or the woman. You're walking into Karen's shop in at the Broadmoor and being able to talk to her about her life and about what her challenges might be at the club, and be able to praise the fact that she's a female director of tennis and has just absolutely crushed it for the last 15 years, whatever. But having those relationships, and that's how I think I was able to be successful in that. By circling back to how the relationships were developed, it wasn't always through just being a tennis pro and teaching but was also volunteering. It was so important. I was a volunteer with the USTA and RSPA for that matter, for 30 years before I became what I'm doing now. And I built many relationships with other pros who had that similar like mind. NTRP was my sweet spot. And so I was a verifier at out of section championships for 16 years. I saw tens of thousands of matches and analyzed people in tenths, and got very good at telling the 3-5 woman that, no, you really are 3-5, you're not 4-0 yet, but if you work on your backhand, you might get there. But relationships is all about relationships. So that was the most important thing.
And on the manufacturing side, where do you think, even in today, and I'm going to ask you what's changed, because a lot's changed since we were both on the manufacturing side, but what What obligation, what responsibility do you think manufacturers and brands and companies have in the tennis and racket sports ecosystem? What's their, other than, from them, they want to make money, they want the profitability and margins, but what is their responsibility to the industry?
Well, I think it's even a greater, deeper question than that. What's the responsibility to society, right? I mean, I think it's important that we all recognize that we share this fragile planet together, and wouldn't it be great if we got more people off the couch? Wouldn't it be great if more children who didn't have parents were able to play tennis or pickleball or padel or whatever it might be, and gain the same kind of quality of life that I currently enjoy? So, I mean, that's kind of an esoteric answer, but I think that the challenge that we see in today's world are the mega corporations that now own most of these companies, and they're often driven by bottom line and shareholder results, which is maybe not the right mix for success in what I mentioned earlier. So, I mean, yeah, they've got to make money, but let's get real. I mean, giving a few things out to a school or a Title I group or an NJTL, that'll pay off in ways that you can't measure. I mean, those are things you just can't measure. That'll come later in life somewhere. So,
a great example is Patagonia, who is at the forefront of recycling and being friendly to the environment, to the fact where they said, please don't buy our coats one Christmas. Unfortunately, it backfired, and they had one of the best Christmases ever. But I mean, at least they took that approach of saying, we understand. They offered to repair things and to fix them, which I thought was a good tact. And knowing the CEO's ethos, I don't think it was intentional to sell more stuff. I really thought they took a right approach to that.
Right, but I think you bring up a good point about the CEO's ethos. Who's driving this, and what are their motivations? And so I think that's important. That's one of the things I like about Babala, even though, yes, they're corporate, but they're family owned. I mean, they've been in the same family for 5 or 6 generations, and visiting their warehouses in France, their gut factory in Pleurimel, and seeing the craftsmanship that goes into what they do. And I'll also add that in a personal side, when we lost everything in our the fire disaster that we had in Colorado, one of the first boxes to show up a week after the fire was a box about as big as this table, full of clothing for my wife, shoes, rackets, balls.
Oh my gosh!
For me personally, so I've got brand loyalty forever to that brand.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. As you look at your time as a manufacturing rep and as a director of tennis, which I know you've got more experience back on the tennis side before, what do you see as today's challenges for professionals in our industry? Like what are they facing? And ultimately we're going to get to how do we get more people to engage and become professionals, but what do you see today as the challenges that they face in today's landscape?
I think that a lot of the challenges are the same, right? How do you connect with people? How do you resonate with an individual? How do you sell that person, for lack of a better word, on getting their kids in the junior program and playing tournaments and making those investments that they make in their life to put a racket sport front and center. There's, I mean, the internet has changed everything. So the digital world is a huge challenge. Things change every week. There's a new platform. So learning that language as a professional, I can't imagine doing that now for me these days. But those are challenges that I see. But the reward's still there. I mean, you're helping people. You're making a difference in society and people's lives, and so that's the part that has remained the same.
I think what's really interesting about that is, people, and unfortunately our industry, we're still commissioned salespeople in a lot of ways. We still have to, every hour is worth X and every half hour is worth Y. And we have to look at, or our industry has to look at every customer like that, unfortunately. But you do get those people that when they connect with people, they connect forever. And that is I think it's, can you learn that skill? Can you teach people that skill? Or do you think that you're born with that?
That's a good question. I think there's definitely components of that can be learned. I mean, if you're watching the young pro, or like all the assistants, I like to think all, but most of the assistants that worked with me over the course of my career, my goal was to get them to the point where they could also become directors of tennis and leave.
Sure.
Not that I would encourage them to leave, because that would always add to my workload. But you can learn. In fact, like right now, we're going through a transition in the section where we've lost probably our one of our top performers. Tiffany Milner has moved on and to take a great position, but we're replacing her, and the person that we're working with to replace her, there's going to be some coaching involved in terms of how you interact with people and things that that can help resonate. But I think it's tradeable. I think it's nice when you have a good solid base you're born with. Yeah.
I think it's also the willingness to learn. I think if you find somebody that has that open-mindedness and that the ability to actually say, okay, great, teach me. And we were at the Club Management Association meeting last week, and one of our members, who's the head of the director at Baltimore Country Club, brought with him his assistant named David, who I actually met my first day, who was going through the workshop. And he has become that guy. Teach me, teach me, teach me, teach me, teach me. And he has done everything that Gavin has taught it, and Gavin has given his trust. And I think that's that two-way street is when you find people like that, you want to hold on because you see they have future in this industry.
Well, you were like that when you were a young man, right? Right?
I mean, you have to be. You were too,
yeah,
apparently.
Right. And so because if you don't have that mindset, you are very self-limiting onto what you can develop. But you're right. I mean, it's wonderful when you can find those people. It's great.
I think in our industry, you've got some people who are vested, and then you have some people who are invested. And I think it's the invested people that see the success because people feel that care. They feel that connection.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
When you think about your current role in the USTA, and what are the things you're working on in Intermountain from your perspective and from the USTA side? What are some priorities for you, and what are the challenges that you're seeing right now in the industry?
Sure. Our like I said, how much time have we got? The mission in Intermountain, our strategic plan calls for us to support our districts. We're Colorado, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Montana, Idaho. We have 660,000 square miles in 6 districts. Each of those districts is governed by a volunteer board, and they have paid staff, different sizes. And every one of them is different in terms of how they can grow the sport of tennis and how they interact with their constituents and what needs they have. And so that's always the challenge for us. We have a board that is made up of representatives from each one of those areas. I'm very fortunate because on my board, or on the Intermountain board, it's not my board, it's the Intermountain board, we have 5 RSPA pros on our board.
Fabulous.
So they have that perspective and that mindset. So in that context, I think, my personal belief, I'm very biased, that Intermountain has the secret sauce in terms of culture, for sure. We've been working on it for a decade since I got there. I think that in terms of the USTA, I've been a part of the USTA for 45 years or so. I started when I was 12. But
we all did.
But I have never been so optimistic about the landscape that the USTA is providing. Lou Shear is a huge change agent. Like we talked earlier today about Sanders and the CU coming to there, and how one person can make a difference in culture. Well, I'm seeing that with Lou at firsthand, how he's restructured the organization, who he's brought on, the roles he's created within the organization, and he's following through. One of my favorite sayings is under-promise and over-deliver. And the USTA for decades has over-promised and under-delivered. And now that's flipped, and it's very refreshing to see that. So, I mean, we have more resources than we've ever had before. There's so many initiatives that are now section-driven, not national-driven. And so they're seeing that tennis has grown at the grassroots level. And it's huge that to not have to fight that paradigm as an executive director, which is what we were doing for 8 years of my tenure.
And as you have, again, progressed through your career, you actually made the decision to be involved not only in the RSPA divisional leadership, but also at the national level. Tell me about that journey and why. Why were you interested in continuing to do more, and just your perspective on that? And I'm going to add on to that, since I'll just let you talk about it. And then how did you see the evolution of the name change from the USPTA to the RSPA? You were part of that process as well. So maybe just share that with me if you don't mind.
I'll start with the back end of it. I mean, I think that the most important thing, in my opinion, with things like that is you get an extra set of eyes. You hire a professional outside consulting firm to come in and guide the process. You don't try to do it from within, and that's what you guys did. And that's what we all did, I guess. I was back part of that. So that was a huge thing. So that I think that when it finally hit the street, it was polished, it made sense, there was research that had done behind it, etc. We went through going back to the leadership component and the outside consulting firm. We had an outside consultant come into Intermountain, do a 360-degree analysis of the organization, did a major restructure about 15 years ago. And that's what's really helped us with our culture. In terms of my interest in leadership, look, I've just seen a lot. I've been around a lot. I've suffered a lot in a variety of different contexts. And anything that I can do to help someone who's coming into the industry, youth. I've got 2 granddaughters that love to play tennis, and they're 6 and 8, and someday they might be a part of the ecosystem. And so anything that I can do to give back was my why. I mean, that's why when I threw my hat into the national board landscape, I actually had a little time at that moment that I thought I could pull that off, and so that was my why. Yeah.
And as people are coming into the industry, and you talk to high school athletes or young college athletes, and you get in a conversation about this industry, what do you say? What's your sales pitch about why to be a member of the rackets industry?
I think Chuck Gill said his elevator speech, but for me, that's a good question. My main thing is you can just make a difference for yourself and for the planet if you do this. It's the mission is not to make money. The mission is not to. You could do that, but that's not the mission. The mission is helping people, and if you really put your heart into that, then there's no greater calling than to be able to change someone's life, which is tennis changes people's lives. So it's incredible. And if you can be a part of that and be a change agent for that, I can't think of a better calling. So
When you think about how racket sports is growing, I mean, tennis is up, pickleball is up, padel is a new emerging sport. Squash is actually big in the Intermountain area and a new Olympic sport. How do you see that becoming a more well-rounded career opportunity for people, and what would you tell them as far as how to get in?
well, how can it be a career opportunity? I think the most important thing is be curious. And I mean, I just had my first padel lesson this morning and I loved
And
it.
you're hooked?
Oh my God. So, I think that knowing the sports is important. I think there's an obligation for all racket sports professionals to know scoring, basic things about it so that you can have a conversation over cocktails with someone to, laud the difference of it. How is that going to help someone's business? I think it depends on the setting, obviously, but more and more facilities have multiple racket sports, and the more that the better you're able to serve the mission of that particular organization, whatever it might be. If it's a public facility, if it's a private entity, whatever that might be, the more you know, the more curious you are, the better versed you are, then you're just a better asset, and that comes back to you in spades.
And as you think about the need, and so we have a court need in almost every racket sport. We have a coaching need in every racket sport. We also have a retention need in every racket sport. What are some things that you guys are working on to help solve those needs in Intermountain?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the bottom line is, particularly Intermountain, we need indoor courts, and we're losing them. I mean, we're losing that battle right now, and so it's one of those situations where I think we're kind of circling the wagons. I will say that it's very refreshing that the USTA National Board has increased funding for grants for tennis facilities tenfold over last year. I think that being able to leverage those dollars at the district level for us will be huge. It's very important. I think looking at alternative spaces. My granddaughters play with Gonzo Tennis, Gonzo Garcia from the Boulder, Colorado area. Unbelievable human being, and he runs Gonzo Tennis out of gymnasiums in the wintertime, and the kids love it, and they have a ball they can't wait to go. So, using alternative spaces I think is important. I think it's going to take more. It's going to take more awareness. so that maybe celebrities can tout the benefits of all racket sports. So there's a bigger, broader base of people that are aware of how important and that tennis is the healthiest sport. It's been proven. We're not just saying that because we like to hear ourselves talk. So all of that stuff will help free up those dollars to build them into either public-private partnerships or just private entities, whatever. It's nice to see that pickleball franchises popping up in warehouse spaces where that's a great place.
Unused space that could be repurposed for something to get, as you said, get people off the couches.
Yeah, and maybe telling that story more broadly so that people see that there's a Lowe's store over there. Maybe we could do something with that, whatever. So yeah.
And how about coaches? How do you bring more coaches into our ecosystem, and whether they're community coaches or whether they do it full time? I mean, what's a strategy, or what are you guys working on in Intermountain?
Well, in Intermountain, we're each district, like I said, we support the districts, and each district's a little different in their approach. Most of them do high school coaches workshops. Many of them work with the RSPA Intermountain Division. Our RSPA Intermountain Division actually is structured the same way. So each of our districts has a district, RSPA, Colorado district, Nevada district, etc. And they'll do coaches education workshops periodically throughout the year in those areas. And how our section helps, we help financially, we don't totally bankroll it, but we work together, a partner on the financial component of that so that they can pull it off and make it happen and get the right people there. So I think that's important. I think it's important to reach out to kids coming out of high school. I mean, what RSPA did with their junior thing a couple of years ago with the younger people, I think that's fantastic. I think that's the right approach. I think that's spot on. Tennis on Campus is a big untouched organization. Look, there's 350 million USTA adult league players in 350,000 USPA adult league players. That's a lot of players. Right, yeah. And it's grown. Anyway, I think that's an untapped market for coaches. So I've always think it's never really been targeted as these could be your 350,000 ambassadors. Is that how do you get in?
Right.
Just give them a quick little one pager on this is how you might get involved.
Or even how you just sell tennis. I mean, sell come join, come do this, come. Yeah.
Colorado did an amazing thing where they did a coaches workshop for that and they did target that. And actually 2 guys that are on my 4-0 men's team went to that. I didn't know this. And then they came back and we had our Saturday practice and they started talking, I went to this coaches thing. It was so cool. One of them now is an assistant coach at a high school that it has a no-cut program in our community. So, I mean, I think you got to think outside the box in terms of that. But people that are interested, that's like circle back to my guy Wayne Nagaki, the art teacher in high school. I mean, he's the one that helped me learn to pronate my wrist on my serve, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So
is that also a painting technique? I wonder if that all came together. Could be
calligraphy
or fishing. Is that a fishing thing too?
Right, they transfer for sure.
So I think what's interesting, you mentioned about the league players. If you get to a 4.0 level or better, you could absolutely, I think, become some sort of coach. I mean, I think that ought to be a very specific target, because then somebody's got a minimum level of skill, and then you can teach the rest of it along the way. But one thing you said earlier, I wrote down and underlined 3 times, is fun. And I think all of us need to remember how much fun these sports are. I mean, the enthusiasm you had on your face when I saw you earlier today about your first padel lesson was amazing.
Yeah.
But you had the same enthusiasm about your 4.0 men's team.
Oh, yeah.
All this is fun. I mean, we get to work in this sport that is an absolute blast. And I don't think we're talking enough about that.
We work in the toy department of life. And so it's important to remember that. I don't know. For me, it's like that's one of my first questions I'll ask a fellow pro when I see them is, hey, you playing any?
Yeah.
And often I'll get, no, I haven't had time, or I'm not doing it. But sometimes I'll get, playing on this team or playing on that team. I played this tournament. I went to this national championship. So I think it's important to not lose track of that. I think the challenge that happens, obviously, is that you got to work so many hours to pay the bills, right? And so the question is, where do you balance all of that? And then it tends to compound itself into lack of physical fitness. And I think that for me, something that's helped me immensely for the last 28, almost 30 years is I'm pretty committed to fitness. I'm in the gym just about every day. I do something cardio every day. It's Nordic skiing, it's road biking, it's mountain biking, it's swimming. And then also for the mind body awareness, I think I do meditation. I think meditation is a huge plus. And one of the things that I think that our industry maybe could do more of is promote awareness around fitness like that, or give pros maybe the tools to manage their time better so that they can squeeze in that 15 minutes of cardio or whatever might work out. So
Yeah, those are some really good tips, and I think you're right. I think you have to have a balance. We are so used to hearing about the grind, and that grind is real. And you felt the grind, I felt the grind, but that grind is real. But it doesn't have to be. And I think employers are changing, and I think we need to help our professionals change those employers' mindsets as well. Yeah. I mean, they're people too, and I think we have been so reluctant to push them any change because tennis was always a little maybe not growing. Are we going to keep it? Or are we not going to keep it? We've never had a better chance to go change the mentality of how people are paid and how they're hired and fired, because tennis is booming and all these other racket sports are booming too. So I think we should work on that. I think collectively as an industry, acronym agnostic, we all need to help people, have a life and have a balance to that.
yeah, I mean it's all about culture, and so it's all
Right.
about
Going back to your original,
what you tell, what's important to you as a general manager, what's important to you as a director. It's I know I know directors that make their people take time off.
Right.
And so it's not the right answer, maybe depending on the context, but yeah, I think it's important to help mentor that skill set, the skill set of balance.
Right. And even just having those mentors available to ask a question like that. And for those listening or watching, the RSPA does have a very thorough mentorship program that Kevin Theos manages, and there are more and more people needed to be part of that.
Yeah.
So Robin, the landscape is changing. We are seeing people moving into and needing multiple racket sports, not only certifications, but also experiences, but they've also got to grow and expand. What's your advice to somebody to do that? And how, when you look at the changing landscape of the industry today, what skills or what do the professionals need to learn to be successful?
Well, I think you need to know your product. You need to know the different softwares involved with each of these organizations and these sports. You need to understand the equipment better. There's yeah, I think it's important that the professionals take the time off the court to study, so that you know what you're dealing with, how the rules work, what the gear looks like, because it's all different and it changes rapidly. Like, it changes just about every day. And there's so many different alphabet soups to now all these things. There's plenty with the USTA and the RSPA alone, but then you add all these others. I just think it's important that you become the expert in your field for all of these things if you really truly want to be successful. So,
well, when you look at it, when you were a director of rackets, people came to you for everything. What kind of shoes should I wear? What should I string my racket with? And what should I eat pre-match? Yes. So that's only grown exponentially with internet and social media and pressures and teams and leagues and stuff like that. And you mentioned earlier about, having balance and finding nature and finding, things that help refresh you and recharge you and energy. But I think energy is one thing that we don't teach, and we don't teach energy management in this industry as well. Have you had any experiences with learning about that or feeling that yourself?
sure. I mean, I think it's important you got to budget time for yourself first. I mean, that's the most important thing. And so something I learned a long time ago when I've had some knee issues, a long story with injuries, but it taught me to schedule my time first. My time goes in my book before anything else does. So I think that's maybe the one thing I would say to people it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to go off in a tangent on social media or go out, whatever it might be, but you've got to budget time for yourself. So
yeah, I think that's great. And I think you said it, you've got to study, you've got to commit to our industry. And I think that's the other thing too. Some people may not choose it, they may choose them, or they may fall into it. But once you're in, and if you want to be successful, you do have to commit. You've got to go in deep, and you've got to learn, and you've got to seek advice and and seek that
And
mentorship.
it's fun. I mean, it could be fun.
It should be fun, right?
You know, it's not like we're having to study biology or got to work on these pronouns,
Statistics.
You know,
No, we don't want stats.
Exactly. No, it's a fun thing to learn. So
it should be. It should be. Rob, as we finish up, the big question is, and you have seen this industry from many different angles. You've had success, you've had hardships, you've had that. If you're the commissioner for the day of tennis or of racket sports, you pick. What do? You have one day.
I have one day. Okay.
And you can't. Oh, you have. Oh, he's got it. He's got a written answer. I love it.
No. I'm just going back through. Well, yeah, I think there's one. Okay, commissioner for a day. I think I would go back to how do I help the coaches become better coaches, right? I mean, I think you really have to start at the bottom up. You could start if I have unlimited powers, then yeah, we're gonna lose a certain percentage of soccer fields, and we're gonna lose a certain percentage of all these other facilities, and we're gonna build racket sports facilities instead. But I don't know that would go over very well with society. So
you're a commissioner. You can do anything you want for one day.
But I think the main thing is I would work with the coaches on what we just now talked about. Like, and how do you become successful as a player? You work hard, you have tenacity, you be kind. I think it's really important to help people be kind to each other, particularly this day and age. Exercise and fitness, meditation, and get out in nature. I mean, for God's sake, go for a walk along the river. Go get in a boat. Go climb a mountain somewhere. And I went on a tangent there, but I think it's important to realize that the ecosystem is built from within. And if we can build that mindset, I think it'll organically expand out. So
you nailed it. That's really, really good. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for being here. Thanks for your time in the industry too.
Oh, thank you.
We all really appreciate it.
Same. Thank you. I know you guys are doing a great job, and especially you. I want to compliment you on the job you've done here. I mean, you've done an amazing job as a leader of this organization. So
we do this for our membership, and that's ultimately why we're here. Rob Scott, very, very impressive. What a background, what thoughts and insight. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on episode 3 of our Racquets United podcast. And if you want to learn more about Rob or learn more about the RSPA, go to rspa.net. We'd love to hear from you, love to help get you into our industry. Thanks so much.